Hello, everyone. This is Video Journal Response for week 9. Yeah, so here we go. All right. So, looking over this week's readings, I really noticed, me personally, I noticed how they complemented each other and showing a major turning point in not just the artistics, but socially and culturally. So, in chapter 5 focused on the Cold War era, and it really highlighted how the cultural climate of that time shaped Broadway. The U.S. was dealing with the mix of fear, patriotism, and a desire to define American identity. And that energy spilled into the theater world. So, what stood out though was how musicals they started to have a shift in their tone, becoming more aware of social issues and being more willing to address them openly. An example that I got out of the text was South Pacific. And I love that show. That's a really, really great show. But in South Pacific, you have the song You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. And in that song, it doesn't sugarcoat anything, it gets in your face with it. It directly confronts racism and the idea that prejudice is learned and it's not natural. That message was incredibly bold for that song and that show, especially in an era where segregation still existed. This moment, it actually connects strongly to Stemple's Showtime chapter. He also talks about South Pacific as a milestone, however, he emphasizes its artistic impact. He explains how the show didn't just include serious themes, it married them to musical form in a way that felt cohesive and intentional. The storyline, the music, the lyrics, all these things reinforced the emotional and moral message. And to me, that's where the shift becomes clear. Broadway isn't just entertaining anymore, it's starting to challenge and provoke thought. And especially in a time where uh, everyone kind of has their finger on the button during that whole Cold War era, it really begins to see a clear shift. So another thing I got out of this week's readings was that there was a shared theme that the audience was also changing, and because of that, the industry also had to change with it. So, going back to the whole Cold War thing, audiences became more socially conscious and more curious about complex and controversial subjects. They weren't just satisfied with light entertainment anymore, and as a result of this, creators had to now evolve the kind of narratives they were putting on stage. Wolf mentions that shift, or he mentions this shift through examples like West Side Story, which tackled immigrant uh, identity, racial tensions, and violence. These topics they also reflected real American struggles. To me, this connects nicely with what Stemple was discussing. So, in Showtime, he describes how musicals became more integrated during this period, meaning that not just the script, but the music and choreography, all those things, they come together for a reason and not just for funsies. It was about these pieces fitting together to tell a more cohesive and deeper story. So, in both chapters, what I got was a back and forth relationship. Audience wants more, creators respond with better material. And the domino effect of this is now Broadway is evolving into a more respected art form. And it almost feels like Broadway and American society were beginning to mature at the same time. So, overall, both of these chapters made it very clear to me that the mid 20th century was, of course, a turning point for musical theater. Broadway was evolving from just the bare basics uh, And with the Cold War influence and tone, and the audience as well influencing this industry, all of these things began to come together, and we get to this point where creativity and commercialization are now pushing Broadway and musical theater in general into becoming a more meaningful cultural voice. So this era, it didn't just change musicals for the moment. It set a new precedent, a new foundation for where Broadway is to go. And without this shift, I don't think we'd have the boundary pushing, what's the word? Socially conscious musicals that we have today. So those are my thoughts for this week's reading.